and welcome to The Ripple Impact, the podcast where we dive into those fascinating small moments, big decisions, and unexpected ripples that create waves of change in brands, businesses, leadership, culture, and in life. I'm Laura Barber, the founder of Ripple Impact, a strategy and storytelling advisory that helps founders and leaders build brands that are felt, not just seen. After more than 20 years inside global giants, I learned that real growth comes from human stories that spark connection and trust. That's why I created this podcast, to uncover those ripple moments, the sparks, the insights, the turning points that change people, brands, and culture. Because when we share them, we don't just tell stories, we create waves of impact. Each week, I sit down with bold thinkers, founders, and what we call wave maker guests to explore the ripple moments that shaped their journey and the lessons you can take to transform your brand, leadership, and lives. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Janey Brown, a performer, recording artist, and founder of the Fearce Academy. Janey has spent 3 decades performing in front of thousands, writing songs with Grammy-winning producers, and now she's the founder of Fearce Academy, a wellness and performance coaching company that empowers performers, speakers, and leaders to turn fear into fuel. She coaches everyone from artists to entrepreneurs to Olympic athletes and Fortune 500 executives, helping others face fear, overcome self-doubt, and unlock their full potential. She's an author, an educator, sought-after keynote speaker on resilience, mindfulness, and mindset. She has a unique blend of artistry, psychology, and lived experience that makes her message unforgettable. Janey, welcome to the show. I am so delighted to have you here with us today.
Likewise. Thank you for that epic intro. I'm flattered.
Well, it's all you. It is all you. I say this often to my guests. I do my lovely introduction and they're like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I was like, it's all you and it's all your fires. So thank you so much for being with us today. It's a real pleasure. And I've got my fabulous, colourful, sparkly jacket on just for the occasion too.
Yeah, you should give the camera a little
just a little
wave so they can see.
Yeah. So let's start right at the beginning. What inspired you to step onto the stage at the age of 10? Take us back way to your childhood and those early years and your journey.
It's a great question. Let me go all the way back to 10 years old or younger. It's funny. It's one of those things that's hard to put into words. It was just this thing that came through me. Before I stepped onto my first public stage, I was singing to birds and bees in the apple tree in my backyard and forcing my family to sit down and watch my reenactment of the entire Lion King soundtrack. And it was just kind of came through me. And then it was my parents who were like, well, I think maybe we try getting you into doing this for real. And I had my first audition at 10, stepped onto my first public and stage in a professional show at 10. And the rest is history. I just did that all throughout my childhood and became a recording artist later when I left home.
Yeah, I loved it when we first caught up and you talked about cutting up little bits of blue paper and throwing blue confetti for your stage performances.
Yeah, I forgot I told you that.
Yeah.
It was for Can You Feel the Love Tonight in the Lion King scene when it rained.
I mean, you always need confetti in a performance, let's be honest.
Totally.
What gave you such confidence at such a young age to just perform and be on stage and put on these productions?
That's another great question. I think in the beginning, I always think of, have you ever heard of the 4 stages of learning? It's like unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. In the beginning days, I think it was a lot of unconscious incompetence. And I was great on stage, like for a child performer, but it wasn't until high school when I really became self-conscious and started to understand what the stakes were as an adult performer and what it took. So as a kid, it was just this thing that was like, yeah, like I'm awesome and this is fun and let me just dive into something, because that's the personality I had, was just being obsessed and really going in wholeheartedly. So I don't know that I would say it was confidence, but it was unearned confidence. It was just this like fearlessness.
Yeah. And childhood joy and passion and a hobby that you just loved so deeply.
Yeah. And the lack of learned fear at that time, at least in relationship to the stage.
Yeah. So talk to me about learned fear then.
Yeah. Well, so fear is a thing that is conditioned in us, and it's for good reason. You know, there are dangers in the world that we need to protect ourselves against to survive. there's two types of fear, or there's two types of threat. One is real life and death danger, right? And that threat is real. It incites fear. It incites the fear response physically, mentally, emotionally. It gets us out of danger. It's our best friend in that context. But then there's imagined threat. And imagined threat is what you believe is a threat to your life, but it's not. And it's often things that are social related. So getting on stage or asking someone out on a date or getting on camera or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's this threat and risk assessment that it's often blurred with all of our anticipations and worst case scenarios. So learned fear it's both. You learn not to put your hand on a hot stove, or you learn not to go near a dog that's off leash and is a stranger dog. But you also learn people can be cruel. People can be jealous. People can betray you. The latter is what goes along with stage fright, which is what I eventually developed.
Yeah. And tell us that story, because from a moment of throwing blue confetti and having such joy and confidence and stepping on the stage and living your best life, to then fear kicking in arguably a little bit down the road. You didn't start with that, but it developed. Tell us that story and how that happened.
Yeah, it could be a combination of things. I mean, I'm sure it is a combination of things. On one hand, you could imagine that as a child performer, the stakes aren't super high. Like, you're usually in roles that are silly, and you don't have to be a perfect singer. You don't have to be a perfect dancer. Like, you're just a child in a childlike role. And so people are just going to clap for you, right? So there's probably a bit of fearlessness because fear hadn't been learned yet. A bit of maybe this support that would have been there anyway because you're a child. I was a great performer. There's just sort of the world revolves around you as a kid, right? And then as I started to move into teenage land, it was like bad skin and body image issues and just the natural self-consciousness that goes along with the developmental years in high school, like cattiness from girls and jealousy and just all of it. And you also start comparing yourself to other adult performers. For whatever reason, I was comparing myself to Mariah Carey and Christina Aguilera, and it was like the stakes were so high for me to get to that level, because that was my dream, was to become a signed artist, which eventually happened, but we'll get into that maybe later. So it was just a compound effect of like realities kicking in. It was no longer beginner's luck, and it was like, okay, you want to be a professional? Well, here's some challenges that go along with that. And one of the major issues is that in the industry, especially back then when mental health wasn't a conversation at all, it was like fear was just this dirty word. Oh, if you're too afraid to get on stage, then just get off. Like, you're not meant for this industry then. And for me, since it was my whole world, I was like, I'm not afraid. So I just buried it.
I'll just do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so did burying it mean that it came back out even more extremely later?
Yes. It ended up doing some serious damage to my health. There's two ways people deal with stage fright, or let's say two manifestations, and maybe there's many manifestations, but I'll focus on these two. When you have stage fright, you can either like publicly fail on stage, and that can inspire you to like figure things out and prevent that from happening again, which would cause you to address your stage fright and address like what's making you afraid and really manage that. Or you can just say like, oh, this isn't for me. Let me choose a different career. I'm good, right? Or it can manifest as you actually do excellently on stage. You just feel like hell before and after. I was the latter. And that's both a blessing and a curse, because luckily, I guess for my own ego, I always did excellent. And my excellence in performing got me quite a ways, which was helpful. But I didn't have any incentive to address fear, because it was like, well, I'm always successful, right? Success means applause. Success means more work. Success means people telling you that you're a great performer. So what do I need to change, right? But the fear itself was so closely linked to core issues and maladaptive beliefs about myself and worthlessness, and that drove perfectionism. And so those behaviors then just had this compound effect of later my health being destroyed and my mental health as well, like physical and mental. So yeah, it has a compound effect. It's either going to come out on stage or it's going to just destroy your life behind the scenes. And I was the latter.
Yeah, and eat away a little bit at you, because I have nowhere near the experience that you do, and I don't ever pretend to be anywhere near in any cinema league. But myself and my sister both danced as children all the way up to, well, just before university actually, so competitions and exams and shows and things like that. So no, we're like teeny tiny league.
No, I wouldn't downplay that.
No, but the reason I bring it up is like the pressure was so felt,
Yes.
and the expectation,
Yep.
and what you had to achieve and what you had to look like and how you
Yep.
had to behave. And in one way, and it's funny because I was on a podcast recently, I talked about me being on, being a dancer as a child and being on stage actually helping me today with my confidence. But on the flip side, like a sheer serious amount of body issues and self-consciousness. And I always feel like the music industry has such a reputation for being really quite toxic. Is that true? Was that your lived experience?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, before I get into that, I do want to say I wouldn't downplay the dance world. I found that one of the harsher environments, like specifically dance and ballet,
Yeah.
and just the girl culture there and how girls treated each other and the expectations of the coaches and instructors. And not to mention, you did that in your developmental years. So not only are, let's say the more toxic experiences shaping you and your worldview, it's also your interpretation of what's important is totally morphed.
Yeah.
Fame, for instance, as in a child's eyes, fame just means love, right? If I'm popular, if I'm famous, I'm going to be loved, and all this bad stuff is going to go away. So the stakes are so much higher for you to do well because you're equating fame and success with love. And you need love to survive. Whereas maybe an adult who gets into performance as an adult is able to differentiate, this is what I do, and then here's who I am. As a child, it's completely enmeshed. It's, this is who I am. It's who I was born to be. It's all I know how to do. It's like literally my survival. So I would just say to you, regardless of how many people you performed in front of, the fact that you did that from childhood until right before college or university it has a toll. I would definitely put that in the same category. And then again, the dance world, especially because it's all about body.
It is all about body. Yeah. And as you said, there's this element of not just achievement and your craft and your passion and your hobby, but in a dance context, it's what you look like determines what parts you get, not your ability and your skills, but physically your body, your height, your development stage, etc. And it's so interwoven in terms of your identity. And as you said, it's such a key developmental stage. And you're so like vulnerable as a teenager, right? Because you're changing, your mind's changing, the hormones, your body's physically changing. And to go through such critique at such a young age, how did you deal with that? Because as I said, like, we were talking little league here, but you became a recording artist. Like, how did you deal with such pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of didn't, right? I developed an eating disorder. I really self-abandoned a lot. Substances were available, all kinds of ways. And then all at once, I don't want to completely like crap on myself. I lived a healthy lifestyle. I worked out, and, I tried to eat healthy. Like, there was good aspects to my behavior, but there's a lot to say about how even the healthy side of my behavior was used to like keep me in check, and make sure that I didn't fall out of line of like beauty ideals, and even just the control piece, right? Like everything was so out of my control. Even the industry opportunities that come along, let alone actually landing something, the opportunities that come your way that are a good fit for you were, in my opinion, scarce. And so that felt so out of control. And so I had to do something to feel in control, and constricting food and food behaviors like binging and purging, like that type of thing is very closely linked to control. So I kind of didn't cope with it until I was forced to with some serious life crises.
And at what point did the correct, because we haven't even talked about you getting the recording artist. You actually got you got to what you wanted, and you became a recording artist. Tell us about that moment. Tell us how it happened. Tell us how it felt.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had been trying to make it as a recording artist. So I left home at 17 after my child performance career. I landed my first touring show in musical theater performance. And then I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a recording artist. So I moved to Toronto from my small town around 18, and then started recording. And probably for about 5 years, I was trying different genres and performing different, with different bands, and just finding myself as an artist. And this producer from New York, who is a Grammy award-winning producer who's worked with Alicia Keys and Jasmine Sullivan, we somehow got in contact. I can't quite remember how. And he signed me. And it was this dream come true. Finally, I'm a signed recording artist. And in my mind, it was like, okay, and then eventually I'll move to like a major label. And I was so miserable in that contract. I don't want to say too much, but there was a lot of different factors. It just, as an independent artist, I wasn't getting the money that I needed to really propel lapel. And I just felt like I was still alone. It was like, I thought, okay, now I'm going to have a team. Yes, my music was paid for. Yes, I was getting flown around. Yes, I was making progress, but it just felt like it felt like pulling teeth to get this thing to go still. And I was like, this is even more miserable than when I was doing it completely by myself. Cause then at least I didn't owe anyone royalties, and I didn't have to go through this like approval process to do what I wanted to do. It just felt like I would present a song and it would go through a 6-month iteration tweaking process to even get to the point where we're ready to release. It was this crazy machine that I just didn't enjoy. And I learned some really hard lessons. There's your dream, especially your childlike dream, and then there's reality of the industry. That was a wake up call. But what's interesting about it is the first crisis, there was 2 big ones. Around, let's say 2 years into this contract, I lost my voice and I had to give up. I was coaching at the time. I had to give up all my classes and I had to completely stop singing and rest. And that was probably one of the most insane identity crisis moments I've ever gone through, because there was a time, it went on for like a year. And there was a time in this process where I was like, I don't know if I'm actually going to ever sing again. This could be it. But it was a blessing and a curse, because in that period, I learned what else I was made of, and I needed to learn what else I was made of, because I was so vulnerable and beholden to this one industry that was hurting me over and over again. And I didn't think I had any other abilities. I didn't think I had any other paths. So I felt trapped there too. So it gave me this insight in like, oh, I have a brain and I can study nutrition and learn science. But it also got me out of the contract because I wasn't able to perform. I wasn't able to deliver. And so we parted company, and that needed to happen. So that was the beginning.
So interesting, because you almost lost your voice metaphorically through the contract, right? You didn't necessarily have the ownership or the control the license and the freedom to do what you want without this machine tweaking and changing it, and then physically losing your voice as well. That's so interesting. And as you said, a bit of a blessing of disguise of getting you out of that contract.
100%. Yeah, it didn't feel like that at the time. It felt like my world was ending, but totally, like, it's a great insight. I actually believe that was the reason I lost my voice. And again, I was losing my voice to myself, even like all the self-denial, all the just self-abandonment. And like, I would be willing to sacrifice eating, sleeping, you name it, to make this happen. I remember one day I was on set for music, and I, at that point, gone like 16 hours without eating. And then I was so exhausted and so tired. I was on a bunch of uppers. And then at one point I was doing this, it was an aerial performance, and I got sick because when you go from right side up and you're spinning and then you flip upside down, it feels like you're spinning a different way, but you're not. And it can really mess with like your vestibular sensory sensor. Anyway, so I was really sick. So I had to like be on all these uppers to make sure I was awake and functioning. But then I had to take like Gravol, which is like an anti-nauseant, but it also makes you really drowsy. Like I was just on everything just to get through, you know? And that's the type of stuff I would do to myself. Like it's no wonder that I lost my voice for a year. It's no wonder that I had another crisis down the line. But the other thing that was really great about the losing voice is that I got in with a speech pathologist. I'd never been officially trained as a singer, lessons here and there, but I taught myself. And so there was a lot of things I was doing wrong and straining and whatnot. So I went into the speech pathologist, and she really helped me tie my voice to my psychology and help ground me in my body, which I was completely abandoning at the time. And eventually, like, her and I stopped because she was basically like, your situation is beyond my scope. I think you actually need to get into psychotherapy. And that was the beginning of me actually addressing all of the behind the scenes stuff, addressing all the fear actually, though, facing it actually, not just superseding it and overriding it, but looking it in the face.
Yeah, interesting. And then recognizing that as well, that actually there's more than a physical need here. There's a need to almost heal, but in a different way.
That's right. Oh, like almost all of it was that. The physical thing was just an after. In my opinion, it was just an aftermath. Yeah, like I was pushing too hard and in a strenuous way, and I needed technique and stuff. But this was bigger than that for sure. Sure.
So tell us what happened next then. So you had the recording, you lost your voice for almost a year, which I can't imagine how that was to go through, where the voice is literally your career, but also your identity as well, to then leaving the record label. Tell us what happened next.
Yeah. So my voice eventually recovered, and I got back into performing and got back into teaching, and I was doing quite well, actually. I was leveling up in how much I was making, and I wasn't in a deal anymore, but I was still putting out songs. And there was this guitar player that I was working with at the time, and we were really close, and we were going to potentially get funding for our project. So I didn't quite turn my back on the idea of getting investment for my music. But long story short, there was this other disaster with that situation. He ended up leaving the country, and I had to regroup and figure out how these people would still invest in me as like a solo artist. And they were happy to, but then I found out that they were also just corrupt. And it just felt like I was hitting wave after wave. Like just as I like sipped air, another wave would hit. And I just felt like I had nothing left. I was on my knees. At this time, I got into a relationship with someone that I really loved, and stuff started to go rocky. He was basically like, I don't know what you have to do to not be like this tornado all the time. Either you sort this out and go to therapy, or I'm leaving. Right. And so it's like the speech pathologist, she was like, you need to go to therapy, but I didn't do it right away. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. No. So it wasn't until I got into this new relationship where this man gave me this ultimatum, which anybody that knows me knows that doesn't typically work with me, but I really loved him. And it was one of the best ultimatums I ever had. So
and it came from a place of care.
Yeah, for sure. And he had every right to say this. It was mayhem between us for sure. Anyway, I got into therapy and we addressed everything but my stage fright. I went in there to try and manage that because that was seemingly where the tension was in our relationship. But when I got in there, it was like, yeah, this really isn't about stage fright, or your stage fright itself isn't about the stage. It's about you not feeling like you're enough as you are. It's about you feeling like you are really not good underneath it all. It's about you feeling like you have to show up in the world kind of godlike for people to like care. And we need to like walk that back and practice self-acceptance. So on this journey of getting into learning my mind and healing childhood traumas and from the industry, but also from outside of the industry, I started to become very fascinated with psychology, and I started to study it on my own. And I went into some trauma trainings and learned how to support people with really, really severe trauma, and that taught me about myself. And I started writing the material for what later became Fear to Fierce, my book, and what became Fearce Academy. And even though I'm learning all this psychology and getting all this psych insight, and I'm learning about trauma, and I'm taking a little bit better care of myself, I was still not in a place where I was ready to give up being a perfectionist or give up some of these other dysfunctional habits like the eating disorder. And like there's just all this stuff going on in the background still. Anyway, in 2017, there was this other pinnacle, and I was launching Fearce Academy for the first time. So I was taking my first cohort of people through the program, and my boyfriend and I broke up. It was like we broke up. I had nowhere to live. I found out that I had a tumor in my pelvis, and I was launching Fearce Academy all in the first week. And this was it just broke the levee. Like I just shattered from inside out. But I did successfully take that cohort through the first program, and it was the beginning of Fearce. So you can only go so far with ignoring these deeper inner child traumatized parts of yourself that exist in the shadow before it's going to come out sideways. And it just brings it back full circle to your original question. Did this come out worse later? Yes, twice actually.
Yeah. But what resilience though for you to hold on to such trauma and drama and challenges throughout your life to then go, I'm going to create the Fearce Academy. And as you said, crisis week. Wow. How many things to go through in 1 week? I don't know how many other things could have been thrown at you. And the fact that you got through that week is incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy.
The resilience to do that is amazing.
Sometimes I wonder if it's resilience or just survival, or if maybe they're the same thing in that context. I don't know, but there was no option to slow down. And it also helped facilitate. Actually, I remember, so the Fear to Fierce program, it used to be called the Performance Mindset Program. Fearce Academy was established as the name of the company, but the program was just Performance Mindset Program. And I remember that I was taking the cohort through 5 modules at the time. And the 5th module actually hadn't been written by the time the cohort started. And I knew that I had faith that I would get it written and sorted by the time the 5th week came along. But it was actually that hell week that shot me into a deeper level of understanding of the shadow self, which was and is what that module is about. And it helped me write the rest of it. So it not only was about like resilience and survival, but it also helped facilitate the process that I needed to go through in order to help these other people.
Yeah. And what was the moment where you were like, I want to help other people? Because there's a red thread throughout this, right? Which is this element of stage fright and overcoming your fears and your self-consciousness, arguably, to get you to a place of fuel. And you call it kind of Fearce to Fuel. Was there a moment, because you talked talked about the performance and what it was called before. Were there some pivotal moments where you're like, it's called the Fearce Academy. I want to teach. I want to inspire people. I want to mentor. I want to coach. What happened for you to go from you're a performance artist to setting up a Fearce Academy? To some that would feel like quite a pivot. I can see the red thread, but what were there moments that really created the movement?
Definitely. Great questions. Okay, so I was still performing well into my early 30s full time, but I was also coaching full time. So after I got my voice back, I started teaching right away. That part of my career excelled. I started coaching professional athletes in the NHL, and I was really reaching like a pinnacle in that part of my career. And then I was performing full time, but I was so exhausted because I was running two careers side by side. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to continue. I was getting burnt out, and I just knew that I couldn't have this split identity anymore. So my idea was to blend those identities, was to go, okay, I'm a wellness coach and a mindset coach because that's what I'm doing with the athletes. That's what I'm doing with myself to get on stage and with my therapist. So why don't I create a program that helps performers or leaders or anyone who's in front of others overcome stage fright? And I used all of my education on the nervous system and breath from yoga and all of my stage experience and all of my experience in high performance settings. So that was the idea. I also, at the time, this is about 2016, I remember thinking I'd really like to do something where I can be remote. This is before remote was a thing, but you were seeing certain people come out with different online programs. And so I was like, I want to do that. So that was the idea behind it. I needed to blend the careers, and I also wanted to make meaning out of all of it. The fear to fierce piece, the pivotal moment for me that actually helped me get there and helped me understand what the blueprint would be for the performance mindset program and later the book, was this understanding that there is no way to get rid of fear. There is no way to be fearless. The point is to actually embrace your fear. And in a performance context, that means embracing that you are imperfect. That means allowing yourself to go a little off key, or allowing yourself to look like you're nervous, or allowing yourself to be human. And it was the defining moment of managing that. I remember I had one specific show where I had this realization and this epiphany as I was writing the content for the program. And I went on stage with my new understanding that I was conceptualizing at the time, vulnerability and Janey Brown's work, right? Yeah. And I did this performance, and it locked in. I was like, it is okay that I'm imperfect as a singer. It just doesn't matter. I can feel my truth. I can feel my self-acceptance, and I can sing from that place. And it's an experience that you have to go through to really understand the power in it. But that's the key to overcoming stage fright, is self-acceptance, is embracing your shadow, So
incredible, because I was going to say, it's totally about vulnerability, isn't it? And about authentically being yourself and knowing whatever that is, that you're perfectly imperfect being you. And no one else can be you. And there's such a beautiful, powerful thought that actually you're strongest when you utilize your fear and use it, as you said before, using it as fuel.
Yes.
Not just trying to repress it and put it in a little box and hide it and pretend it's not there, but actually including it as part of you and your performance and building strength from that is such an incredible thought for anyone, whether that's standing on stage, presenting to people, coming on a podcast, doing a presentation, walking into a meeting with confidence. It's such incredible lessons for people to take.
100%. Yeah. It's this need to be a certain way so that people like you. And when you start to realize, well, I don't need them to like me, it'd be nice, but I don't need them to like me because I like me. That is all the difference. Because people will and can criticize you and reject you. But if they're rejecting you for something that you're already rejecting in yourself, it's going to feel like the world is ending. And it's going to make you internalize rejection and have more imposter syndrome and people please and perfectionism. But if you accept the thing in yourself that you've been rejecting, and then they reject you for that thing, it's going to hurt, but it's not going to feel anywhere the same. It's not going to attack your sense of self. It's just going to be like, that's a bummer. It'd be nice if they accepted me for this thing, but I don't need them to. And I can still get on stage and perform.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how do you help people then, without giving all your secrets away and all your modules?
Happy to give my secrets away.
But how do you help people that just have crippling fear, whether that's stage fright or presentations or meetings or just having a voice. Like, you don't even need to be on a stage, right, to sometimes have fear of speaking out. How do you help people that go from such a place of fear to actually give them the energy and the confidence to get over that? How do you do that with the people that you work with?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a process. I was giving a keynote last week, and an executive woman came up to me and she was like, "I hear that you're here today to talk about overcoming fear and growth mindset." She's like, "I have to present today just for like a little minute. I'm really good and competent at my job, but I get really nervous before I go on stage. What do I do?" Well, ideally we're working with overcoming fear outside of the performance environment over time. But when you're in the performance environment, you've got two options. You can either be afraid and shake in your boots, or you can just decide to say to yourself, "I am going to crush it. I am going to excel. This is about them, not me." Just these positive affirmation type things. But that is the only context that I would ever say positive affirmations are effective. I think that what we really need to do is actually get deep down inside and listen to the voice that's afraid and find out what it's afraid of. And once we know what it's afraid of, then we can start to soothe it, and we can start to work with it, and we can start to provide tailored support and strategies for this voice. So this is a process. It happens over time. I have this approach in the book that I call the trifecta. So to make any change, you have to start with 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, and adjustment. You can't change what you can't see. I think it's pretty obvious why you need awareness, and there's several tactics to get awareness of self, one being mindfulness. 2 is acceptance. And this is something a lot of coaches miss because they think, okay, once you're aware of it, you can change it. Yes, but you need to have acceptance, because you can have awareness of something and then completely deny it. I was aware that I was afraid. I was just completely denying it and pretending that I wasn't, and denying it from myself and pushing through.
Yeah.
And the goal is not to push through. Sometimes you have to do that, but the goal is to embrace reality. And that embracing of reality is the bridge between awareness and adjustment, which is where all the alchemy happens. So once you move into the adjustment phase, in this context, in trying to face fears and neutralizing fears, the strategy is listening to it. It's giving it a voice. It's, okay, I'm aware that there's a voice now. What part of me is that voice speaking from? How do I need to love it? How do I need to integrate it into my being? And it's a process. It's a process of lifestyle habits. It's a process of sometimes therapy for self-reflection, or sometimes just shadow work by yourself. It's a process of practicing vulnerability, of exposing yourself to the threat. You can learn all you want, but ultimately you have to get out there and expose yourself. So it's a process. It is in the book. I'm happy to share any and all secrets from the book, but it could take an hour for me to go through it all. It's something that you have to chip away at off stage, out of the performance environment, so that when you get into the performance environment, it's just second nature.
Yeah. And as you said, sometimes these moments feel really vulnerable, and to go from nothing to stand on a stage and in front of thousands, that is such a massive leap in training. It's like how you create space and environment to practice these things and not feel that it's such a leap of vulnerability, but you can hone your skills, because you're not going to go from terrified public speaker to all of a sudden you're, a keynote and you're on the TED stage and you're taking over the world with your voice. How do you have these visibility moments that don't feel so uncomfortable, that you're so out of your depth, that you can learn these skills? And as you said, listen to the voice and maybe retrain it or reframe it, or find out where it's helpful and where it's not. Because sometimes the fear is just giving you energy, right? And sometimes it's actually really crippling and it's holding you back.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's giving you energy when someone's attacking you on the street. Like, let it give you energy, let it fuel your body with all of those chemicals and thoughts. But when stepping on stage feels the same as stepping off a cliff, we're in trouble. That's not helpful fear. It's maybe helpful fear, but it's not helpful to sit in that. We need to transform that, right? We need to turn it into fuel. And fear can be fueled by way of just being a compass to show you what your deepest desire is. And that's not my idea. There's many people who have said the thing you're afraid of most, do that, because it's likely the thing that you want the most. It's the highest stakes thing, right? But fear can also be turned into fuel, even just through the process of allowing the energy without your interference to evolve. One thing that I was thinking about yesterday was how I used to listen to the song Lose Yourself by Eminem, and just the song alone would help me summon this fire and this grit and this almost anger towards excelling on stage, as opposed to be like crying and being out of control. It helped me channel. So fear can be used as a compass. It can be used as something that we transform energy. It can be used as just just this thing that instead of fear being there, it's now self-acceptance. It morphs, right? But if we let it run away with the spoon, then yeah, that's not transformative. That's debilitating, like you said.
Yeah. And for our podcast listeners and our YouTube watchers, tell us about the book. So how did that come about? Tell us the construct of the book. Yes. I mean, the title itself, please talk us through the title because it is genius.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you. Actually, I think it was, what is now chapter 5. So there's 6 chapters now. At the time, there was 5. When it was a program that I was taking people through, it was 5. And then around 2022, I was like, all of this content could be a book. And so that's when I started writing a book. It was 50 pages at the time. Actually, this is kind of funny side note. Nina, who was on your podcast earlier, I had a call with her because I knew she was a best-selling author. And I was like, can you give me some advice on like how to do this? And she was like, I'm like a signed author, so I can't help you with the like self-published route, but why don't you talk me through what you've got and we can see where you're at in terms of how ready you are to self-publish. And I was like, well, it's just like this small, like 50-page pocket self-help book. I've already made iteration over reiteration over the years. I don't want to touch it. I just want to get this out there, right? Because I, as an artist and a songwriter, I understand how long songs can be in the vault. Like it could be a decade before you release it, and it's not a good feeling. So she was like, okay, cool. Well, if you're cool with it being a B, then I think you can release it now. And then I was like, yeah, I am not cool with it being a B. Totally not cool with that. And she didn't mean any harm by it. It was just like, okay, if you're cool with it being like a B instead of this life's work, like, yeah, I see nothing wrong with that. Have it as like a offering, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it was the best thing she ever could have said. Her and I joke about it all the time. And she always feels so bad. And I'm like, don't feel bad. It was perfect.
No.
Yeah. So between 2022, it turned from a 50-page pocket book to a 180-page actual book. I was in Costa Rica and I was writing some of the content that was in there. And it was this experience where I realized that to be a whole person with real confidence, you have to actually love the parts of you that you're afraid of other people finding out about. Like real confidence isn't going on stage and pretending you don't have those parts. It's embracing them and loving them so much that it doesn't matter if other people don't love them or not. It doesn't matter if other people see them or not, right? And I was writing a certain sentence and I was like, it's actually our fears that make us more fierce. Then I was like, oh, fear plus fierce equals fierce. This is a visual depiction of what we need to do to overcome stage fright. Both of these things together are the thing that makes us courageous and it makes us rise and it makes us vulnerable and powerful at the same time. So that was kind of the idea behind Fearce Academy. Fear to Fierce, it just evolved into that as it started to become a book.
Yeah, fantastic. So the book outlined then your modules that you would take people through on your training and your courses. So it's such an incredible place to get inspiration for people, because often fear is one of those things that you either just deal with it and you push through regardless, or it gets buried somewhere, it gets locked in a box, and actually it's something that people don't deal with very well. It's such an incredible thought to utilize it as part of your power rather than something that is inhibiting you. So amazing.
Yeah, thanks. It's here hopefully to help, and it helped me. And yeah, you're right. It's the blueprint for how I don't want to say overcame fear, because we don't overcome fear. We just learn to manage it. So it was the blueprint in how I learned to manage. And I'm still very much in this journey. Just because I wrote the book on it doesn't mean I'm exempt from the lessons, right? I use this all the time. That keynote that I spoke at last week was a pretty high stakes situation. And yeah, I recall feeling, oh, there's the imposter syndrome coming up. There's the fear of wanting to come off a certain way and wanting to be perceived a certain way. And you get better at dealing with, I can't control how people perceive me. I can only trust and believe that I'm doing the best that I can. I can't necessarily stop imposter syndrome from poking its ugly head, but I can name it and say, I've seen you before and you're not going to take me out. You know, you can come along for the ride, but I'm going to be in the driver's seat. I know why you're here. You're here to protect me. You're here to keep me small. That's your job. I respect that job, but not here.
Love that. Not today.
Not today, Satan.
Exactly. I love that. And when you talked about doing the keynote as well, the executive who came up to you afterwards and said, I'm doing the speech. And, you know, you must work with so many executives because it's such a space for business, isn't it? There's so much public speaking that goes on in businesses and in leadership and executive teams. How do you help people in business get over the fear? Because, you know, you've worked with them from Olympians to FTSE 500 people. How do you help executives who, you know, maybe they're starting out and they've never presented before? What tips and advice would you give to them?
It's kind of a process. And first it's going through the trifecta: awareness, acceptance, adjustment. Like, let's really get down into what's going on behind the scenes. The reframe process, it's a bit deeper, right? You're reframing beliefs about yourself. And oftentimes these beliefs stem from early experiences like childhood. And so the beliefs that someone has about themselves and why they might have those beliefs differ from person to person because their early experiences are different. But the process of self-acceptance and really embracing the parts of you that you're afraid of others finding out, that's a universal process, in my opinion. It depends on what the person's going through. It's hard to give a universal reframe for beliefs because beliefs differ. But ultimately, in my opinion, the way to become whole is to become whole with your dark side. It's easy to become whole with your shiny side. We love, when we're excelling and crushing it, and that's easy to share. But it's not easy to become whole with your dark side. And in order to be whole, we need to become whole with that because we're human and humans are flawed and humans have fears and humans are imperfect. And I find that oftentimes people in the audience or whoever you're speaking to relate more to you when you're human. Yeah. They're glad that you're, that you're not this godlike figure. And frankly, I actually argue in my book that there is something to be said about charisma and smoke and mirrors. I think that's really necessary, especially if you're speaking on stage to a very large audience. Like, you have to let your personality get to the back of the room. Same with singing and performing. But there's a difference between only having that and having that and authenticity. And I think that those who are just smoke and mirrors it's like this imitation process. And I think that the imitation of I am competent and whatever, I think it leaves a good impression. But I really think the people that have that and authenticity will leave the largest impact, be more memorable. So it's advantageous for us to really embrace our authenticity.
Yeah. And as you said in your 3 A's, the acceptance piece is so pivotal to doing that and to allowing that in, seeing it in yourself and accepting that and almost embracing it and using it as your superpower, because it's often those little nuances and those, what I call imperfections, but I don't believe they are, is actually what makes a person a person. It's those beautiful little nuances that make someone who they are. So how you accept that and how you embrace that. We ask everyone on the Ripple Impact this final question, which is, what advice would you give to aspiring wave makers? So maybe that's someone stood on the edge of their own ripple. What advice would you give to them?
Oh man, there's so many things I could say to that. One of the things that's been so helpful for me recently is forgiveness. Forgiveness of those who hurt me and trying to reframe how they've actually helped me. I'm in a place now where I truly look back on my past. Anyone who's betrayed me, anyone who's hurt me physically, emotionally, mentally, I am grateful for them. I honestly would not change a damn thing. And there's something about that gives me so much courage to then try and risk in the future. Because if you have this belief that this thing you did led to this horrible mistake or this horrible failure, or you wasted your time or whatever it is, if you have that belief, I believe you're going to be more afraid to take risks because you're afraid of that outcome. But if you believe that all of it matters and all of it made you who you are today and you only get stronger with time, then I believe that it's going to be more incentivizing for you to take risks. So for me, forgiveness of hurt and really selling myself on like, no, I actually wouldn't change anything has been so pivotal in driving my success forward. I also think there's something to be said about believing that the desires in your heart are there for you to pursue. Especially as artists, there's this belief that us following our heart is this selfish pursuit. And well, you're doing what you love, so you don't really need to get paid. It's like that makes up for it. And it's like, no, following your desire is just following your vocation. That's what is going to help everybody, let alone you. And you deserve to get paid well for it. So it's, follow your heart, believe that passion and drive and desire is there for a reason. And if it's not, you're going to find out on your pursuit toward it, and really try and work with forgiveness and coming to this place of peace and acceptance for everything that's happened to you, because you wouldn't be here in exactly the same way if it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thought. And the thing is, your story and what you've gone through is what makes you who you are. It gives you the resilience, it gives you the strength, it gives you the tenacity. The fear in the first place that you experienced led you to create the Fearce Academy.
That's right.
The Fearce Academy wouldn't even be there.
That's right.
Fear had never cropped up. So,
Exactly.
that coming from such pain to turn it into such purpose and such drive and ambition, and then ultimately a thriving business and a book is incredible. And as you said, if you'd have changed that, you wouldn't be here now.
That's right.
We'd
That's
be
right.
having a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's what's beautiful of human stories, right? Is sometimes in the pain and the betrayal and the difficulties that actually something beautiful can grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. That's a great way to paraphrase and summarize. And yeah, can't even add to that.
Janey Brown, thank you so much for being so open, sharing such powerful stories and inspiring conversation. Your story is a reminder that strength isn't the absence of fear. Actually, it's the courage to face it, to own it, and actually to use it as fuel for something much bigger. And ultimately, your mission of helping other people transform fear, identity struggles into resilience and strength and purpose. So thank you for your work. Thank you for the Fearce Academy. Thank you for your book.
Thank you.
It's been so inspiring. So thank you so much for being so vulnerable with us and for sharing your journey with us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the work you do.
And for our listeners, if you're ready to uncover the human stories that sit behind your business and brand, please get in touch with us at The Ripple Impact so you can create waves of change. Please look out for Janey's incredible book. We'll add Janey's book to all the bios and all the things that we share. So please look out for that. That is a wrap on this Ripple episode. Tune in weekly for more bold voices, inspiring wave maker guests. I'm Laura Barber. This is The Ripple Impact. Janey, thank you so much. It's been so inspiring.
My absolute delight. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to do it again.
Thanks so much. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Bye for now.